Hello guys, and welcome back to Joe's Ventures. And today we're doing part 115 of our Planet Zoo mod spotlights. We take a look at some of the wonderful mods people have been making and use them to talk about some of the wonderful biodiversity that we share our world with. So today, we've got a lot of great cakes mods coming up, because I know everyone loves to see them. We've also got a couple other really cool mods that we'll get into. So we're going to be starting off today with Fluke Boy, who has made a African savannah hare. So really cool little guy here. Nice to see some more lagomorphs getting featured. So the African savannah hare, or Leopardus victoriae, is a mammal species that is a type of lagomorph in the family Leoparidae, so a type of hare. Is native to Africa and is considered least concern, so a species doing quite well. They live mostly across sub-Saharan Africa, so they can be found across basically down from South Africa up around to Nigeria, Senegal, and Tanzania. So pretty much all the kind of standard countries that you think of when you think of the African savannah is you kind of mentioned there in the name. So in terms of description, they are a medium-sized species, and they grow between 41 and 58 centimeters, or 16 to 23 inches in length, and weigh about 15 to 1.5 to 3 kilograms, or 3.3 to 6.6 pounds. And you can see the ears have that little black tips to them. The dorsal surface of the head is also greyish-brown. Their flanks and limbs are reddish-brown, and they have white underparts. The general colouring is generally richer in tone compared to those of other hare species, especially in mountain regions where their hairs have a rather darker side. And the tail is black and white and above below, and they look quite similar to the Cape hare, but they can be told apart by their distinctive grooved incisors. That's another way to tell them apart. So in terms of behaviour, they are a solitary species. They are also nocturnal, so they tend to live by themselves, and they also come out at night. They rely on their camouflage to stay hidden, but they can actually run up to 70 kilometers or 43 miles per hour, and sometimes can leap vigorously sideways to break the scent trail as they're leaving. They typically feed mainly on grasses and herbs, but also chew roots, shoots, and bark, and sometimes even eat fallen fruit or fungi. And they do, like other species of rabbits, they engage in coprophagy, which means they eat their own dry fecal pellets, so they have almost like their own poo to get more nutrients out of stuff that's already been pre-digested. In terms of the breeding behaviour, they have not been that well studied, but we're going to have a look at a cute little baby here with his stupidly big ears, very adorable. They seem to reproduce at any time of the year, and the female can actually give birth to several litters during the year. Typically, the young are born in the open and able to run pretty much right after birth, so they are precocial. And the mother seems to separate them and visits each one at intervals to allow them to suckle, and they are weaned at about a month old. So that's typically how long they'll do that there. But yeah, really cool. Definitely a big fan. So that's another good one by Fluke Boy. Next up, we got SkyPolaris. Is always featuring in these episodes recently, just like Great Cakes is, it seems. So we've got here the Indo-Chinese leopard. So this is Pantherapattis dalcourti. So these are leopard subspecies found in Southeast Asia and southern China. And in Indochina, they are rare outside of protected areas and are threatened by habitat loss due to deforestation as well as poaching. And they are considered critically endangered. The population in 2016 was believed to be between 973 and 2,503 marked individuals, with only about 1,000 breeding adults. And in 2019, it's estimated that their numbers are still decreasing. They're between 77 and 766 individuals. So they're both. This subspecies was named in 1930 by Reginald Innes Pocock, who was found a specimen in Andaman. So they describe the Indo-Chinese leopard as kind of a rusty red colour as well, and they have quite small rosettes that are about 3.8 by 3.8, or about an inch and a half in diameter. They've got quite short fur as well, and he commented that you see only really black leopards on the Malayan Peninsula. That's what you see in menageries. And he also assumed that the population of black leopards increases farther south. So in Java, you got 10% of the population, I think, are melanistic. Records from capture trapping or camera trapping suggest there's some locations in Thailand and Malaysia show that these guys can be recorded. The Kara Isthmus is kind of spotty. South of them, only melanistic individuals were recorded. But melanism is actually quite common in dark forested habitats, and black leopards are thought to actually have an advantage due to that, since they are black. In terms of distribution, they are found around Southeast Asia, but typically they're really only found in small population remnants that are only found in Myanmar, Thailand, Peninsular Malaysia, and also in Cambodia and southern China. So there's a few different places. Lots of them are pretty small populations. Some are areas are locally extinct. So I'm not going to go into exactly all the different places you find them, but typically they're all pretty sporadic, and which is quite sad. So in terms of their ecology and behavior, so between 1985 and 86, they actually did quite a bit of studies on them, and leopard scats were found in forests, montane forests in northern Thailand. And prey species for these guys include Indian mojak, wild boar, long-tailed gonal, dusty leaf monkeys, Malayan porcupines, and hog deers as well. They've also radio tracked them and suggest that their home ranges can be between 14 to 18 kilometers for males and about 8 kilometers for females, or about 5.6 to 6.9 square miles and 3.4 square miles as well. And they do prefer areas where prey species are quite common and they offer potential hunting opportunities. So they also extend their range during the wet season as well. And yeah, that's quite cool. In terms of with the general prey, they tend to feed on wild boar, macaque, like a mouse deer. They were actually identified to be segmented in more fragmented secondary forests that were more popular foods for them. But sadly, they do have a lot of threats, pretty comparable. They look the cute little baby, soften the blow for them a little bit. Compared, most things that impact most leopard populations and things like that. So the few issues that they really face is habitat destruction, and illegal wildlife trade is another big one there. So habitat destruction is where inside protected areas there actually is less diurnal activity and they're more heavily used by people, so they tend to avoid them. And because a lot of those people eat for subsistence, they go out and kill deer, which means less food for the leopards. In highly fragmented areas as well, there's thought to be about 28 leopards in the Klang Valley per 100 square kilometers. It's the highest density in the world. As well, and as a result of rapid shittering of the forest, individuals may be pushed into remaining forests, so their population is kind of very high for the capacity, which is a little bit sad. But also because of being famous, leopards and stuff like that, they domestic skins, and also they're used for Chinese medicines to substitute for tigers, and traditional Asian medicines and tonic, which all don't work. 100% they don't work, but people still believe in them and pay for them regardless, which means these guys lose out on being existing, because people want to kill them for their bones and things. So there has been lots of leopard parts seized, sadly. And there was actually the carcass of a black leopard found in 2018 in a Thailand's Tung Nana Sen wildlife sanctuary, and it suggests that maybe just poachers going in, trying to get money off them. So that's really, really sad, to be completely honest. But yeah, they are critically endangered, and hopefully there is some efforts going in to protect them. I'm pretty sure there would be. So there are some sanctuaries and stuff. They just need to kind of push out, hopefully, more leopards out into the world. That's what we kind of want there. Okay, so now we're going to move on to exclusively grey cakes mods. So next up, we've got Pachyruhos, I believe you say that. So this is a very interesting little animal. So I'll explain about what it is. So Pachyruhos is actually an extinct genus of heterotherid notoungulate from the early to middle Miocene of Argentina and Chile. And fossils of this genus have been found in the Coloncura Santa Cruz formations of Argentina, and the Sacramento as well, and also the Rio Forest Formation in Chile. So quite a wide-ranging. So to first explain, I've explained kind of what notoungulates are before. We've had a few notoungulates before on here. So notoungulates are a group of ungulates that are only found basically throughout most of their history, because South America was an island. They were only found in South America. and they kind of took a lot of niches that were taken by other different herbivores. So you have things like we mentioned yesterday, I think. Yeah, it would count as yesterday. We covered Toxodon. So Toxodon was, a very large rhino-like notoungulate. But this is kind of the opposite side of the spectrum. These guys are very, very small. So they got to about 30 centimeters long, or just under a foot long, and would have been take the same ecological niche as a rabbit. So you have rabbit-sized ungulates like these guys, and then you have rhino-sized ungulates like Toxodon and Mixotoxodon, both of which we've actually covered before on the channel. So it's really cool that we're getting the full diversity of these notoungulates. So in terms of they actually resembled rabbit, they would have had short tails and long hind feet, and they were probably able to hop, and they also had a very rabbit-like skull that was well adapted for eating nuts and tough plants. And the complexity of its hearing apparatus in the skull actually suggests they would have had very good hearing, like rabbits, and actually one of the best of all notoungulates, and also had large ears. It also would have had large eyes too, which suggested that it may be nocturnal. And this is actually a fascinating example of convergent evolution. So these guys basically evolved to look like a rabbit because they perform the same function in the ecosystem as a rabbit. So they would have been small herbivores and probably likely very common prey species in the ecosystem, and would have been basically taking the niche of a rabbit, just the same as Toxodon was very big and probably hairless and stuff like that, to take the niche of a rhino, a big, large grazer. So there's a great example of convergent evolution. So two animals are not very closely related to each other. Especially, this is actually a better example because probably lagomorphs and notoungulates are not very closely related, but they both evolved very similar body proportions and features and things because they lived in a very similar way to each other. So the grinding teeth are actually hispodont as well, and are similar to those of another notoungulate called Nestodon. They're actually temporalis muscles as well, were actually poorly developed, and they had large orbits and small fossa. The reduced mandibular coracoid process and muscle scars on the ascending process of the mandibular angle indicates the area insertion was small, so it didn't have very strong muscles as well. Their feet also bore 4 digits, with the posterior pair elongate and when compared to the anterior pair. And whilst the bones of the forearm were separate, those in the hind limbs were actually cosified, so joined together. So hopping, very similar to rabbits and things like that. So really, really cool. Or even wallabies. Wallabies is also probably another good example. But yeah, really, really cool. So we've made our way through all of them. So next up, we've got the 4 mods. This is part of the autumn arrival pack that kind of that Great Cakes made, but they've also put them in their own downloads now. So there's a few really cool species if you want to have a look at them. So here we're going to start off with the ring-necked pheasant. So really, really cool here. So the ring-necked or the common pheasant, or the blue-headed pheasant. These guys are a species of pheasant, and their literal genus name means pheasant, and the species name Colonicus comes from the Latin or modern-day Georgia, as they were kind of where they were originally known from. And they were previously thought to be actually closely related to modern jungle fowl and domestic chickens. They actually are differentiated by them by 20 million years of evolution. So that's quite interesting as well. So in terms of the description, these guys come in many different colour forms of the male pheasant. So they come from nearly almost white to almost black in some melanistic individuals, but due to captive breeding and hybridization between the different subspecies or populations, they are referred to colloquially as kind of wild stock. And for example, the ring-necked pheasants that have been introduced to Europe, North America, Australia and New Zealand are all kind of not specific to any nominate or any of these particular subspecies because they're all likely potentially, hybrids. But they seem to be just a hybrid swarm of different things. In terms of their size, body weight can range between 500 grams to 3 kilos or 1 to 7 pounds, with males typically averaging about 1.2 kilograms or 2 pounds 10 ounces, and females averaging about 0.9 kilograms or about 2 pounds, with wingspans reaching between 56 and 86 centimeters. So the adult male here you can see is of the dominant subspecies, which I believe this one is about 60 to 89 centimeters in length and has that very long streaked tail, as you can see back there as well. That's all feathers, and it encompasses about 50% of his body length. The body itself as well, you can see is barred like quite brightly gold or coppery red, and chestnut brown plumage with an iridescent sheen of green and purple around the head as well, and it is sometimes blue. And they also have quite this distinct red wattle as well, and a small crest, as you're going to see going on there. And you can also see that white line down their neck as well, so that's kind of that barred marking on as well. Which is very interesting. But the females and hens, the hens and the juveniles, all kind of have very similar patterns. These guys are much less showy than the males. They have a duller mottled brown colour, and a little bit smaller, between 50 to 63 centimetres, and have a tail that's about 20 centimetres. Juvenile birds appear the same, but they have a shorter tail until the younger males begin to grow their characteristics of their, adult colours. You can see that there. And they're pretty much, just turn into an adult male, as a kind of mission there. And the green pheasant, which is another species, is actually considered very similar, and hybridization is pretty common. They do on average have shorter tails and darker plumages, so that's another way to tell them apart. And there is a lot of colour morphs you can get of these guys. So in terms of taxonomy, they were considered to be, they were named by Carl Linnaeus as well, and the species was really just called the pheasant, or the Asian pheasant. And they were called the African pheasant as well, as these guys are not actually found in Africa. Which is interesting as well. Except people in landscape of the Mediterranean coastal areas, they might have introduced them during the Roman Empire, so it's quite interesting as well. So their scientific name, as we kind of mentioned now, basically means the pheasant. The pheasant of Georgia, pretty much, is the common name. And in terms of subspecies, it is believed to be about 30 different subspecies in 5 to 8 different groups. A lot of them, I guess, is probably just because of taxonomy not being updated. And a lot of them are based on different colours, different things of colours or things like that. But in terms of genetics and how they're related to each other, the relationships of the subspecies of the common pheasant is believed to have come from southeastern China, and they would have all diverged about 3.4 million years ago. And then sometimes the species also split into a few different species. So the taxonomy on these guys is very kind of all over the place. And there are actually some subspecies that are in danger of extinction due to hybridization, with the last black-necked pheasant actually survived in Greece. The population survives in Greece, where in 2012 there was believed to be about 250 or so, or 100 or so individuals. So, a lot of people want to keep that purity, but honestly, I think 30 is way too much. And a lot of them are based on different colorations, so I'm not sure how much is actually founded in genetics and how they're actually distinctly related from each other. A lot of those are just different color morphs, and, that's not necessarily tied to genetics. But anyway, we're going to talk about their ecology. So the common pheasant is native to Asia and parts of Europe, with their original range encompassing the eastern Black Sea and the Caspian Sea into Siberia, Korea, mainland China, and Taiwan, where they were found in woodland, farmland, and scrub and wetland, so pretty much any really open areas as well. And they're quite gregarious birds, and outside the breeding season, they will form loose flocks. However, captive ones do show quite strong sexual aggression, and, they also, within the same time and space, the sex differences in the use of feeding stations throughout the day. And whether they are hunted, they are always timid and associate human with danger, and actually quite readily retreat. And while common pheasants are able to fly short distances, they do prefer to run. And they've startled ever, they will kind of do a big burst upwards at great speed. And that's why it's hard to keep them in aviaries where they can build speed, because they'll just go right for the roof and then, hit themselves and hurt themselves, which we don't want. In terms of nesting, though, they don't make quite elaborate nests. We'll have a look at the babies while we'll talk about that. So they don't make super elaborate nests. So what they do is they'll nest solely or from the ground in scrapes, with it lined with some grass and leaves under dense cover or of a hedge or a sedge or something like that. Occasionally they will actually nest in a haystack, and old nests left by other birds. They tend to roost in sheltered trees at night, and the males are polygamous, as typical for many different other pheasants, and have a harem of about several different females. Typically, breeding will begin in April, and they will kind of scrape the hollow and line it with grass or dead leaves, and lay a clutch of between 8 to 15 eggs. These eggs are probably brown and olive in colour, and the hen will incubate them for about 23 to 25 days, and then once they hatch, the chicks will stay near the hen for several weeks, yet leave the nest only after a few hours old. And after hatching, they go quite quickly, flying about 20 to 14 days, and then resemble adults at about 15 weeks of age. And in terms of diet, they eat a wide variety of food, so they're quite generalist. Vegetable food includes fruits, seeds, grains, mast, berries, and leaves, while animals include invertebrates such as slugs, earthworms, ants, wireworms, caterpillars, insects, and small vertebrates as well, maybe occasionally taken, such as lizards, field voles, small birds, and small mammals. That's quite interesting as well. So they are considered, there's a subspecies, the southern Caucasian pheasant, was common in Greece as well, and they were thought to be colonists, and this is the kind of black one we were talking about. But as an introduced species, they are found across the world due to their very readiness to breed, but also they are quite a common game bird, so people, introduce them to hunt them. They've been introduced into Europe, North America, Japan, and New Zealand, and they've been hunted in the national range since the Stone Age, probably for subsistence feeding, but they became kind of a native, especially when they were introduced into Europe, kind of an early game bird, and people like killing them basically just for sport and game peepers and stuff like that. And they have been introduced to a lot of places because of that. So they were introduced to North America. They were introduced into North America in 1773, and they introduced them into Oregon, and then they followed them in Washington and California. And these pheasants were, as I mentioned, really only for hunting, and there is some quite large populations of them as well. And they've also been introduced to the Hawaiian Islands, Chile, Uruguay, Peru, Argentina, South Africa, Brazil, New Zealand, and Australia, which are all basically just for hunting. And they do negatively impact on other birds, so they will kind of spread disease. They will be quite aggressive to other birds and compete for resources and nest parasitism, so they'll often actually lay their eggs as well in other eggs of different species. They'll abandon nests and kind of steal their nests as well, so that's really, really sad. So that competes with native birds, so that's a big issue as well, and they often will compete with resources for native birds in the areas, but management strategies are pretty much, making sure, they mow grass to decrease their cover, decreasing roosting habitat, and shooting them in organised hunts. And there is some evidence of population changes. They have been decreasing in some areas. But yeah, they can be a bit of a pest, both for native wildlife, but also farmers. But the main reason they were introduced is because of game hunting. And they were bred, and often actually are, bred and released for hunting around the world. But yeah, really, really cool species. Definitely a big fan. So next up, we're going to have a look at another cool bird. We have got Hare. This is a very common bird with a almost worldwide distribution. We have got the Osprey. Let's see if you're an adult there. Another one also done by Great Cakes Mods. Are you going to click? Not going to let me click on it, are you? No, you don't click. I'll have a look at the adult then. So here's the Osprey. The Osprey, or Pandolin halictus, also known as the sea hawk, the fish hawk, or the river hawk. They are a diurnal species of bird of prey that is fish eating, and they also have a cosmopolitan range that they're found just across the world pretty much. So in terms of taxonomy, they were originally described in 1758 by Carl Linnaeus, just like the pheasant, under the name Falco halictus, but they're now considered their own kind of genus. They were the only extant member of their genus is Panodon, which was actually introduced in 1809 by French zoologist Marie-Jules César Zavani. And the kind of taxonomy has been really, really interesting for and been a big riddle for taxonomists. But they are treated as the sole living member of the family Pandonidae, and they are considered related to the Incipiformes, so that's kind of things like falcons and stuff. And molecular phonetics, phylogenetics kind of suggests that they are similar to Incipiridae, which is basically just kind of things like falcons and the four birds of main kind of prey that you think, like hawks and stuff like that. So a very interesting group, and they're only one of their group, so those kind of birds. And they're unusual as they have the one species that lives all across the world, and there have been some subspecies described, and there is a few general subspecies, but they're not really treated. There are some small differences. There's kind of the Eurasian osprey, the North American osprey, the Caribbean osprey, you could say, and then the Eastern osprey, which is found in Australia and Tasmania and stuff like that. In the fossil record, there is a couple extinct subspecies that range from kind of the Oligocene and into the Oligocene into the Miocene. So they were found in Florida and also in Egypt as well. So they do have quite a wide history. So a very interesting species. They differ in different respects from other diurnal birds of prey, but they have toes of equal length. And the osprey and owls are the only birds that have the outer toe that's reversible. That actually allows them to grab their prey with 2 toes in front and 2 in behind. And this is particularly helpful because they do like to eat fish. In terms of their size, the osprey is about 0.9 to 2.1 kilograms in weight, or about 2 to 4.6 pounds, and about 50 to 66 centimeters, or 20 to 26 inches in length, and have about 127 to 180 centimeter, or 50 to 21 inch wingspan. And is actually similar in size to the largest members of the falcon genus, so it's considered, quite a large one. And the subspecies is pretty similar in size, not too much different between them. In terms of their anatomy, the upper parts you can see kind of a deep glossy brown, with the breast being white and streaked with brown underparts, pure white as well. The head is white with that dark brown mask going on there. And they have golden to brown eyes as well. And they've got a black bill. And the sexes are pretty similar to each other, but they can be distinguished by the female, the male can be distinguished by the female by a slimmer body and narrow wings. That's kind of the way to tell them apart. They tend to be a little bit narrower than the females. And they do actually have a gull-like call, which is actually quite interesting. So in terms of their distribution, they're actually considered the second most widely distributed raptor species in the world, one of only 6 land birds with a worldwide distribution, and they can be found in temperate to tropical regions from pretty much all the continents, except Antarctica. So they can be found in North America. They breed from Alaska to Newfoundland, and then down to Georgia and the Gulf Coast, and then they can be found all the way down to Argentina. They also found in summer throughout Europe, north of Ireland, and then they winter in North Africa as well, so they can be found all across Europe. And Australia, they can be found pretty much all across Australia as well, except, the bits of Western Australia and Northern and Southern Australia, but obviously not inland. They like areas with water because they have fish eating. And actually sad, one of the few places that they're not really found is in New Zealand, which I would like to see one. But they're typically found around areas with lots of water. They found pretty much all across Africa and with decent trees. So very, very wide range they have. So in terms of their diet, they are piscivores, and fish makes up 99% of their diet. And they typically would take live fish weighing up to 300 grams, or about 10 ounces, and up to about 35 centimeters or 13 inches long. But virtually they'll prey on any fish from 50 grams to 2 kilos, or between 1.8 ounces to 4.4 pounds. And even there's been one that was a northern pike that had been taken in Russia as well. And they're quite well adapted. They've got well adapted vision to look underwater for objects. And they have first-sighted prey up to 40 meters above the water, where they hover looking for food, and they often look for their reflection as well. But occasionally they may prey on small mammals, snakes, turtles, frogs, salamanders, crustaceans, things like that. And they will occasionally eat carrion as well. And they have very cool adaptations for their lifestyle. They will have reversible outer toes, sharp toes as well, and things like that to allow them to dive. Backward facing scales on the talons to kind of catch and prey, especially when being oily, and also got oily feathers to keep them from getting waterlogged and losing getting waterlogged, which is very bad for any bird, because that means you dry out or you get wet and then you lose body heat and harder for you to fly, makes you heavy. So in terms of reproduction, they do breed near freshwater lakes and rivers, and sometimes coastal blackish waters. Rocky outcrops just upshore actually being used on Roslin Island in Western Australia, where there is 14 or so similar nesting sites, and many are renovated each season, and some have actually been seen to have been used for up to about 70 years. And the nests are usually just large heaps of sticks, driftwood, turf or seaweed built in the forks of trees, rocky outcrops, utility platforms, artificial platforms, or offshore inlets. And they can be as wide as 2 meters and weigh about 135 kilograms, or 298 pounds. And these actually, on utility poles, they actually have caused powder outages because of the nests and can be fire hazards. So they typically reach sexual maturity at ages of 3 or 4. There's some regions with high density, such as Chesapeake Bay. They may not start breeding until they're 5 to 7. As typically there may actually be a shortage of structures for them to actually use to nest. We never got the cute little baby. Let's see, we can have a look at you over here. Look very, very cute. Oh, you can see the little babiness of it. If there's no nesting sites, they may be forced to lay breeding, but to ease these problems, sometimes posts are erected to help. And there's special platforms to help design and help the species as well that people use. They typically mate for life, but rarely polyandry has been recorded. The breeding season varies across latitude, so spring in September, October in Northern Australia or Southern Australia, April, July in Northern Australia, and winter is July to August in Southern Queensland. In spring, they do begin a 5-month period of partnership and raise their young. The female will lay 2 to 4 eggs within a month and relies on the size of nets to conserve heat. The eggs are typically whitish brown, whitish with brown splotches or bold splotches of reddish brown on them, and they get between 6.2 to 4.5 centimeters, or about 2.4 inches to 1.8 inches, and weigh about 65 grams. And she incubates them for about 35 to 43 days. These little chicks are then born at about 50 to 60 grams, but fledge at about 8 to 10 weeks. And studies look into the average kind of hatching to fledging times about 69, 70 days, typically. And some 22% of surviving young either remain on the island or that they were found. This is on Kangaroo Island. This was a study in South Australia. And when food is scarce, the first chick to hatch is like the most likely to survive. And they have a typical lifespan of about 7 to 10 years, though rarely individuals can get as old as 20 to 25. And the oldest European wild osprey on record lived to about 30 years, so they do have quite a long life. So they're not typically migratory species, but some populations will also migrate. Let's have a look at the parents now. We want to have a look at the parents. There you go. But the European breeders winter in Africa. American and Canadian breeders winter in South America, though some stay in the southernmost US, such as Florida and California. Some ospreys migrate to South America from Florida, and Australian ospreys do not tend to migrate, so depending where they are. And they do actually have, Swedish ones have a high mortality rate due to migration seasons than during stationary periods. They're thought to have been due to spatial patterns as well, so that's very interesting. But they also can suffer from mishaps in human utilities such as nesting overhead electric cables or colliding with aircraft. But in terms of conservation, they have quite a large range. Their range actually covers about 9 million... 965 million. I can't even think of the numbers there. It's very, very huge in just the Africa and the Americas. And they have a large population in the wild, estimated to be about 460,000 individuals. And because of this, they're a large population, large range. They do not seem to be declining. They are considered least concern. But the main threats for wild populations of these species include egg collectors and the hunting of adults along with other birds of prey. But they did decline drastically during the 1950s and 60s due to DDT, which had caused a lot of birds of prey to lose babies because the eggshells would have been broken, so they would have infected the bird's ability to use calcium and made thin eggs and soggy bones, which led to thin eggshells that were easily broken or infertile. But due to the banning of DDT and reduced persecution, they basically bounced back quite quick, so that's quite cool. And they're quite a famous species. They're used in a lot of iconography. So in Nova Scotia, Canada as well, they kind of use the provincial bird of Nova Scotia. Hereditary things as well. Sports, there's the North Florida Ospreys, the baseball team, and many other things. They're kind of an important part of people's culture. So yeah, really, really cool species. Definitely a big fan. So next up, we're going to have a look at another great cakes mod. We've got Hare, and we've got a cute little one as well. This is the long-tailed weasel. So not the short-tailed weasel, this is a long-tailed weasel. So long-tailed weasel, or Neogale ventina, also known as the mask ermine or the big stoat. These are a species of weasel found in North, Central, and South America, and are distinct from the true stoat, which is the one that you'll find in most of the northern areas of Eurasia and North America. And they've been introduced to New Zealand as well. They are quite different. And they're separated by 500,000 years or so of evolution, and they're very, very similar, except they've got long, slender bodies, and short legs with a black tip tail. But these guys have a longer tail, as you could guess. So in terms of taxonomy, they were originally described in the genus Mustela by Heinrich Lichtenstein in 1831, and then were kind of put in their own genus Neogale as well. And they've also got Neovision, which was the minx as well. So the long-tailed weasel is actually a product of a process that began 5 to 7 million years ago. So when northern forests were replaced by open grasslands, and that promoted the population explosion of and evolution of a lot of small burrowing rodents. And the long-tailed weasel's ancestors were actually larger than its current form and underwent a reduction in size to kind of be able to exploit these food sources. So long-tailed weasel actually arose in North America about 2 million years ago, shortly before the stoat evolved in its mirror image in Eurasia. So they're a great example of convergence. Um, the species actually thrived during the Ice Age, and its small size and long body allowed it to easily operate beneath snow, as well as hunt in burrows as well. The evolution of the elongate body maximizes efficiency, of which the species can trap prey underground. The majority of its life is in burrow ground or in tunnels. And the long-tailed weasel and the stoat are separated by about 500,000 years of evolution, and was separated until about 500,000 years ago. And when the Bering Land Bridge opened, the stoat was able to get into North America and is most of North America, but the long-tailed weasel still lives in South America and the southern parts of North America. However, unlike the latter species, these guys are not spread into Eurasia, likely because of competition from the stoat. So these guys are purely an American species, but the stoat can be found in Eurasia and parts of North America. So in terms of its description, these guys are one of the larger weasel species of North America. And there's textual disagreement about their different sizes and things like that. But they typically reach about 300 to 350 millimeters, or 12 to 14 inches, as well. It makes them the same size as large male stoats. And the third states that they were 11 to 22 inches, so 280 to 360 millimeters in length. And then you get 150 for that tail. So they're quite big. And the males are actually about twice as large as females. So you can see their eyes are black in daylight, but bright emerald green when caught at night in the spotlight. They have dorsal fur as brown in the summer, but underparts are whitish and tinged as well. They have a distinctive black tip to the tail. In weasels in Florida, as you can kind of see an example of here, we think we have one that's got like a mask pattern to it. Let's see if we can find it. I think here it is. So sometimes they have like a mask pattern to them, as you can kind of see here, which looks really, really interesting. And they've got yellow tints as well. And they molt twice annually. So they molt once in autumn, which is about October to mid-November, and then once in spring in March and April. And each molt takes about 3 to 4 weeks and governed by day length and mediated by the pituitary gland. And unlike the stoats, whose soles are thickly furred all year round, these guys have naked soles in the summer. And the lion-tailed weasel has a well-developed anal scent gland, which produces a strong odor. That doesn't use it as more of a skunk, but it uses it to mark territory, and also is startled to discourage predators. So it's kind of a little bit different from stoats. They don't spray it; they rub it against surfaces to order the leave the scent as well. In terms of its habitat type, they are found in quite a variety of habitats, but they can typically be found in coniferous and deciduous forests, and a mix of mid-successional and early successional stages, but they prefer open forests, wood areas, and scrublands, but they also can be found in altitudes from alpine meadows down to sea level, and they do not really common in brush or dry habitats such as deserts as well. And in terms of habitat size, it typically is about 1 to 20 hectares with densities of 1 weasel per square kilometre, with the maximum number being 7 weasels per square kilometre. And they're solitary in nature and prefer the distance themselves between each other, and they're not very, very friendly towards each other. So let's see if we can find an adult. Where's the adult? There we go. He's a little being sleepy. In terms of identification, the footprint's about 1 inch wide, and they have 5 toes. Only 4 of them can be seen on the track, though. And one of the ways you can tell them is they've got that yellowish black fur as well, and they've got long whiskers. That's a way to tell them apart. In terms of their reproduction, they generally mate during July and August, with implantation of the fertilized egg actually being delayed till March. The gestation period lasts about 10 months, but the actual development of the embryo only takes about 4 weeks, so about a month. And this is an adaptation to time birthings for spring, when small mammals are abundant. Litter size tend to be about 5 to 8 kits, which are born in May, and they're born partially naked and about 3 grams, in a way about the same as a hummingbird. Their growth rate is quite rapid, though, but by the age of 3 weeks, they can well furred, it can crawl outside the nest and eat meat. And at the time, the kits weigh between 21 and 27 grams. At 5 weeks of age, they open their eyes and they nest, and they can become visibly quite vocal. Weaning also begins at this stage, with the kits accompanying their mother on hunting trips a week later. And they are full grown by autumn, and by this time the family disbands, and then she's able to breed again after about 3 months. So they're able to breed at about 3 to 4 months of age for female stoats, and males take about 15 to 18 months to breed. They tend to like ground burrows that are under stumps or beneath rock piles. They do not typically dig their own burrows, but will steal the burrows or take abandoned burrows of chipmunks, ground squirrels, gophers, moles, and mountain beaver holes. And they tend to steal these kind of chambers as well, and kind of line them with straw and prey for their prey. So in terms of defense, they usually preyed upon by wolves, wildcats, foxes, coyotes, and Canadian lynx. And they'll give off that musky odor that I mentioned when encountering them. And when leaving the area, they'll just leave the odor behind. This is done by the weasels by taking themselves and holding their bodies across surfaces. And they do it to discourage predators, and probably indicating it's a safe haven. The type of reaction also reserved to it the weasel feels it's in danger or is looking for a mate. Tree climbing is also a defensive mechanism. They will climb up a tree and then will climb a reasonable height and then stay motionless to wait for the predator to pass. But another common defense is their black tail, which differs in color, and when the long-tailed weasel becomes more white in the winter, this defense mechanism is actually used, as they use it to distract predators from the rest of the body, as it's more they get distracted by the tail, so that means they are better able to get away. In terms of diet, they are quite aggressive hunters, and actually, like stoats themselves, they will prey on animals much larger than themselves. When stalking, it waves its head from side to side to pick up the scent, and it hunts small prey such as mice by rushing them and killing them. But with large prey, they tend to strike quickly and take them off guard, and they grab the nearest part of the body and climb onto it, maintaining its hold with its feet, and then they maneuver itself up to the neck to deliver the fatal blow. So in terms of its diet, it is a obligate carnivore and prefers to eat fresh and alive food. Only the carrion stored within its burrows, typically that's what they'll eat. Rodents are almost exclusively taken, but they'll also eat mice, rats, squirrels, chipmunks, shrews, moles, and rabbits. Occasionally they may eat small birds, bird eggs, reptiles, amphibians, fish, earthworms, and some insects. They've also been observed taking bats out of colonies, and they do what's called surplus killing, usually in the spring when the kits are being fed, and again in autumn. But some of these surplus kills may be cached but left uneaten. And kits in captivity eat a quarter of their or to half of their body weight every 24 hours, and adults only eat 1/5 or 1/3 of their body weight. But after killing its prey, the long-tailed weasel laps up the blood but doesn't suck it, as popularly believed. And with small prey, also the fur, feathers, and bone are consumed, but only some flesh is eaten from larger prey. And when stealing eggs, they'll actually remove each egg from the nest one at a time, then carry it to self-location, bite the top off, and lick out the contents. Or if they have babies in the pen, may hold it in its mouth all the way back to them. So that's quite cool. And in terms of the subspecies, it is believed to be about 42 different subspecies recognized, but I'm not sure how actually true that is. It's one of those things that people haven't gone back and looked at taxonomy, because they do be like that. And yeah, really, really cool. In terms of also cultural, the North American Native Americans from the Chatham County, North Carolina, deemed these guys to be a bad sign, or crossing its path would mean you'd have a speedy death. So that's a little bit sad, but still really, really cool species. Nice to talk about the long-tailed weasel this time. And you can see we've got this really lovely one that's in its winter coat. So you can see this is an example of its winter coat. So you can see how the tail would be very distracting. But yeah, really, really awesome. Good one, Tristan. So this is the last mod for today, and the last Great Cakes mod, of course. We've got here, the headliner for the pack. We've got the Kodiak bear, or the Kodiak brown bear. So let's have a look at you. Let's have a look at the male, because, we always like to look at the male. Looks really, really awesome. So we've got the Kodiak bear. So Ursus arctos middendorfi, also known as the Kodiak black bear, or the Alaskan brown bear, or the Alaskan brown bear. These guys are found in the Kodiak archipelago in southwestern Alaska, and are considered one of the largest recognized subspecies or population of brown bear, and one of the two largest bears being alive, the other being the the polar bear. And they're often sometimes considered just to be a large population of grizzly bears, but whether it's a subspecies or population is kind of just an issue of labeling, as we'll get into. So in terms of taxonomy, they were first recognized by unique subspecies by C.H. Merriam, who honored it to the Baltic naturalist Dr. A.T. von Middendorf. Those subsequent taxonomic work merged it with all North American brown bears into Ursus arctos, but genetic sampling from bears on Kodiak suggests they actually more potentially more closely related to those of the Alaskan Peninsula and the Russian Peninsula than all the brown bears, roughly north of the US. And they seem to have genetically isolated since the Ice Age, so between 10 to 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, and have very little genetic diversity. And although the current population is healthy and show no adverse signs to interbreeding, they could be at risk of parasites and stuff than other more genetically diverse species or populations of brown bears. In terms of the colour, they tend to be a pale blonde to orange, typical of females or bears of southern parts of the archipelago, to dark brown. And cubs will often retain a white natal ring for the first year of their lives. And they have a similar kind of colour to that of the mainland American grizzly or Eurasian brown bears. So see if we can find the baby there. I wonder if this one has its natal kind of ring there. You can kind of see it there, yeah, definitely. So I don't know why they're all sleeping for me right now. Of course they would sleep for me all right now. But anyway, with this, there's generally much variation in size between brown bears. These guys usually weigh between 115 to 360 kilograms or 254 to 794 pounds. And they're actually a great example of insular gigantism, as they commonly reach sizes of about 300 to 6,000 kilograms. So that's typically how big these guys will get on average, between 660 to 1,320 pounds. So the size for sows or females ranges about 181 to 318 kilograms or 399 to 701 kilograms or pounds, while the males or boars can get between 272 and 635 kilograms or 600 to 1,400 pounds, with mature males being on average between just under 1,000 to just 1,200 pounds, with females typically being about 20% smaller and 30% lighter than the males, and adult size tend to be attained at about 6 years old. And bears that weigh the least, they kind of, when they are emerging out of their dens, they can increase their body weight by about 30% during late summer and autumn. And just like other captive bears, they may be, because they are in captivity and fed a lot, they may be heavier. The adult average bear measures about 244 centimeters or 8 feet in length and stands at about 4'4" or about 133 centimeters at the shoulder, with the largest recorded wild male being about 1,600 pounds or about 751 kilograms, and a hard foot measurement of about 46 centimeters or 18 inches. They will stand at about 1.5 or about 5 feet tall at the shoulder when standing on 4 legs, but when on their hind legs they can get up to about 3 meters or just under 10 feet, or 9.8 feet really technically. The largest verified specimen of a Kodiak bear lived at Dakota Zoo, named Clyde. He was about 966 kilograms or 2,130 pounds when he died at the age of 22. And that's what he was claimed to be. According to his director, he probably weighed close to 1,000, over a ton a year earlier, but he still had a vat layer of 9 centimeters when he died. They are the largest brown bear population, and even comparable to the size of polar bears, which makes them kind of the largest terrestrial carnivore. It's very interesting. In terms of its distribution, they are only found on the Kodiak archipelago and adjacent islands, and the population was estimated to be about 3,526 bears in 2005. And so with an archipelago-wide population of about 270 bears per 1,000 kilometers. And actually, the population is actually believed to be increasing, which is quite interesting. So that's quite cool to know. In terms of home range, they're naturally active during the day, but faced with competition, they will become more nocturnal. The species is also especially evident in bears that live near with Kodiak City. They do not defend territories as well, but they will be nocturnal around people, to avoid people. They do have traditional areas that they use each year with home ranges. Because of the rich variety of foods available to these guys, they have some of the smallest home ranges of bears across the world in North America, and a great deal of overlap as well, so there's quite a lot of food for them. So in terms of denning, they begin entering their dens in late October, with pregnant sows usually the first to go in their dens, with males being the last. And males will emerge from early April, while sows with newcomers may stay until late June. And bears living in the north end of the Kodiak Island tend to have longer denning periods than those in the southern areas. And they typically will dig their den into hills or mountainsides and use a wide variety of denning habitats depending on where they live. And almost a quarter of all bears will also forgo they won't den at all, and will just stay somewhat active during the winter, which is quite interesting. We'll have a look at the female as well, because why not? So in terms of their reproduction, Kodiak bears reach sexual maturity about 5 years old, but most sows are over 9 when they successfully breed for the first time, with the average time between litters is 4 years. Sows will also continue to produce cubs throughout their lifetime, but their productivity diminishes at about 20. Mating season is about May to June, and they are serially monogamous, have one partner at a time, staying together for up to about 2 weeks, between 2 days and 2 weeks. As soon as the egg is fertilized and divided a few times, they will actually enter a state of delayed implantation. So, like as we mentioned with the weasels, they will delay being implanted in the uterine wall, so they can, wait before they grow. Then cubs are born in the den between January and February, and they weigh less than a pound. They are born with little hair and closed eyes, and then suckle for several months, and then emerge from the den in May or June, weighing about 9 kilograms. And they look like, where's the baby? I was going to be smart and be like, oh, they look like this. And you see, they do look like this, which is really cute. Typical litter size is about 2 to 3 cubs, with the long-term average about 2.4 cubs per litter. However, they have 6 functional nipples and can have up to 6 cubs. So sows have been seen with 5 or 6 cubs in tow, probably due to adopting cubs from other litters. And most will stay with their mothers for 3 years, and about half of the cubs will actually die before they leave, with cannibalism by adult males actually being quite a big reason they get killed, which is a bit sad. But they will also leave their mothers at about 3 to 5 years and have high mortality rates then, with about roughly 56% of males and 89% of females surviving. More young females will stay within or near their mother's home range, or most males will kind of go farther away. Most adult sows die of natural causes, while most adult male bears are killed by hunters. And the oldest known male bear in the wild was about 27, and the oldest female was actually about 35. So the females, do live quite a bit longer. It's probably because everyone's targeting the big, boar bears. In terms of habitat, the Kodiak archipelago is considered subpolar oceanic climate with cool temperatures, overcast skies, fogged and windy conditions, and moderate to heavy precipitation throughout the year. Although the archipelago covers only about 13,000 square kilometers, it has quite a bit of different types of vegetation and topography. So there's quite a lot of different habitat for them. And there also about 14,000 people live on the archipelago, as long as the city of Kodiak and the other outlying villages. But the other half of the archipelago is actually considered the Kodiak National Wildlife Reserve, which is quite cool. In terms of their feeding habits, they live across the archipelago and feed on a wide variety of foods, just like normal bears. And some of cases they'll actually eat a lot of salmon. That's actually one of the reasons they think they get so big, is because they eat so much salmon. They eat the salmon that go to spawn in the lakes. And they'll also eat several types of berries, and they'll also eat deer, mountain goats, and elk or calves. They'll eat the the organs as well, eaten first for their high fat content. So they do, like other bears, they'll feed on pretty much, they're omnivores, they'll feed on just about everything. In terms of behavior, they're very intelligent, although a tendency to feed in large dense groups leads to more complex social behaviors. So Kodiaks, they're generally solitary, but when food is concentrated in small areas such as salmon spawning streams or a dead whale or stuff like that, they can actually occur in large groups. Although a few springs on Kodiak have up to 60 bears have been seen within a 2-kilometer radius. And to maximize food intake in these ecological important areas, they've learned to minimize fighting and fatal interactions due to complex communication as well. In terms of the interaction with people, they tend to avoid people. The most notable example is the behavior patterns when they are surprised, threatened, or attracted by human food, garbage, or hunt-killed game. But there has been an increase of encounters due to the increase of local population, as well as increased hunting of Kodiak bears. But, just like other populations, you need to be sure to be safe from as well around them. But in terms of their management, in terms of prehistorically, they would have likely been able to walk back to Alaska on the mainland during the Ice Age, but due to the archipelago was actually locked into the Ice Age and looked to the sea for subsistence. At this time, the natives there occasionally hunted bears, using their meat for their food. But in terms of commercial hunting, the Russian hunters came in the late 18th century for fur, and they considered them a minor fur, but they were still sold. But they kind of recognized that it became, because it's the largest bear in the world, and they kind of, was kind of trophy hunting, and this becomes still a thing today. A professional interest, look at these, people want to go and hunt the biggest bear in the world. And there's been some changes in land status for these guys as well, changing from, oil spills and stuff like that, a lot of ecological things happening. Also putting dams and things to try and, that altered the habitat as well. But luckily there is lots of conservation efforts to really help these bears. They're managed as, as a species or as a population, trying to teach people to live with bears, control their hunting, so make sure people can still enjoy hunting them, but do it in a way that's responsible. So we're not going to have these population of bears going extinct. As well, so that's a big thing, habitat and viewing, trying to make sure people view them responsibly. Also kind of helping with, they are considered endangered species by the Endangered Species Act, but they are considered least concern, and they're not really considered endangered. They seem to be doing quite well. That's a good thing. In terms of hunting management as well, a lot of research going into them. They tend to restrict it. So it is something, and it can actually, non-residents that are required to hire a registered guide, and a cost for hunting one of these bears can be between $10,000 and $22,000. So it's very heavily regulated, and you're given a tag. So to make sure the population is well managed, which is good as well. And also bear viewing. So over the past 20 years, lots of people have been going to want to see the bears, but using air taxis, things like that, or trekking. Although bear viewing is actually called non-consumptive, it does have impacts on the bears if they don't manage it properly. So some areas where there's lots of people, they may not get the fat and protein they need for the upcoming winter, or unmanaged bear viewing can affect bears, especially cows with cubs. So doing it ethically, making sure it's sustainable. It's cool to enjoy these bears, but do it in a way that the bears aren't impacted by people viewing them. But yeah, I think this is a great mod. Really, really loved covering this one. So yeah, I think this is a great place to finish the video. So thank you, Fluke Boy, for your hair. It was quite good. Thank you, SkyPolaris, for the Indo-Chinese leopard. Really cool to see some of those subspecies getting some love. And we've got the other 5 species, the Pachyruhos and the pheasant, the Osprey, the Weasel, and the Bear, all done by Great Cakes Mod. And always knocks it out of the park. Really, some really awesome species. So, yeah, I really, really, really hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you guys like and subscribe, always remember to hit the bell icon to get notified of anything. So if you guys enjoyed this video, if you guys like and subscribe, and bye-bye.